Welcome to the Beyond Jiu Jitsu Podcast. This is episode 144. Today, we are talking about the reality of jiu-jitsu again. We've covered this topic, but slightly different take on it this time. It's an interesting topic. I'm joined by Adam Childs, and I am Kieren Lefebvre.
And here we go. We are still only recently back from our hiatus. Second episode back after a little bit of a break, so feels good to get back in the groove. I don't know about you, bro. Did you get, but I got like quite a few messages from people like once the last week's episode went out that were like, oh yeah, finally you're back.
I didn't get any.
But that's weird because you usually get way more messages than me regarding the podcast.
Just talk about it more. But speaking of getting messages, do you remember the last episode? We're like, hey, let's do a poll about how long to make the episodes. Well, I have the results here.
Okay.
On Spotify, we had 86% of people vote for make the podcast episodes longer, and 14% saying to keep them the same. So as things stand, the poll results, the people have spoken, and they want longer episodes. But I mean, we might run the poll again just to, allow enough time for the listeners to
because
vote.
there could have been a lot of people who missed that first episode back,
because it was just part of We're Back. So someone might not have wanted to listen to an episode about us talking about being back. Yeah. But,
like a lot of people don't have notifications and whatever else set on, like they wouldn't have even known a new episode came out potentially.
Exactly.
But nevertheless, we are back. This episode will go for as long as
it goes.
We decide it goes. But yeah, we're going
to... Speaking of throwbacks, last episode I was talking about how people at my gym, I've noticed like trends, we'll talk about trends and everything like that, and we're going to get into it more. And I said, one trend I've noticed, and this was confirmed by a higher belt, that people at this gym leave their elbows open and rah. I was rolling with a guy, Martin. Shout out to Martin. Martin is a very technical blue belt, a very big dude, very, very strong guy, large human. He wrapped up a Kimura on me, and then he goes to me, whispers in my ear, so I hear people leave their elbows open.
Oh, what a boss. I like you,
son
Martin.
of a bitch. He did not finish the Kimura. He did not finish the Kimura.
Good on him, though.
Got out of it, stacked him and all that, pulled it out. I'm like, never in a million years. It's never happening. You would never come over me. So shout out to Martin. He listens to the podcast.
Well, evidently, right? At least that episode he did. Yeah.
And he said that he normally on podcast episodes he just listens to the most recent ones. He works backwards, right? And with our show, because we don't think a lot, there's a lot of references back to previous episodes, so it does advantage people that have been with us for a while. There's a lot of in things, and we reference, when we're talking about this, we're talking about that, and it's sort of like not only a podcast about jiu-jitsu, of course, that's the primary focus, but it is a podcast about us as well, and what's going on with
human
our
beings and our feelings.
Yeah, take it or leave it. So he was like, it was really like he likes the podcast, but there was a lot of references to previous things. So he was like, let me just go back to the first one, and I'll suffer through the early episodes, thinking that they're going to be poor quality. So if you find a new podcast, right? I don't know if you've had this experience. And say you're over 100 episodes and you like the podcast, and then you go back to the first episode and the quality is dog shit. It's like a completely different podcast. You're like, fuck this. Like it's hard to go back in quality, even though the content might be good. But he just went back to the first one to test it out, and he was like, holy shit. It was like high quality from the jump. And so that was really good. It was an awesome compliment.
Yeah, so referencing previous conversations we've had, so this is if you're like Martin and you work your way backwards, this will be a new story for you. For everyone else, they'll be like, oh my God, how many times you tell this story? But yeah, when Kieren and I started the podcast, it was, during COVID or post-COVID, or was a COVID project like a lot of people. And yeah, one of the discussions we had was looking at like the equipment, and Kieren, for the most people know by now, works in, video editing and production and all that sort of stuff. So knows a lot about microphone and cameras and all these sorts of things. And yeah, Kieren was like, look, these are the sort of the three options we've got, like entry level, mid range, and then like, top of the range or whatever. And yeah, we pretty much agreed from day one that it was like, well, the medium is audio. So like we have to have good quality audio, like back then we didn't even film it. So like video quality wasn't a discussion. Back then Spotify didn't have the capabilities, or might have had the capability, but it wasn't available to the public to have video and stuff. But yeah, from the beginning we were like, audio quality must be good. And these are the microphones we started with. These are the same ones we're using now, right? And they're good microphones. But yeah, like podcasts with lots of episodes, and I guess it depends on the type of podcast. So for example, Lex Friedman, that's like an interviewing style of podcast. Like he has over 300 episodes, maybe 400 episodes or something. Like he has a lot.
Yeah.
You've got to think that it's not like the product is some ever evolving product. What I mean by that is obviously he gets better at potentially his podcast or whatever, but it's not like, it's not like a hair product where you're constantly trying to reinvent something new to market it to people. So you got to think his 350th episode and his 250th episode, like, I mean, you're not going to like see really a difference in quality or whatever. Like it's such a, like the numbers are so vast that it's all going to be more or less the same. You can skip through them. So I scroll back and I'm just looking for the particular individual that like you're not going to go
evergreen. Yeah, you're saying evergreen. They stand on their own.
Yeah, but even then what I'm saying is because of the number of episodes, like it's like it reaches a point where it's not like you're going back to his 5th episode, even though there's 100 episodes between 350 and 250.
No, I get what you're saying now. Yeah.
It's not like you're at episode 2 where like maybe he sucks at doing it. He's by episode, let's call it 100, he's already got his shit together, and like you're not really going to be able to go, oh man, episode 102, how bad was Lex Friedman at interviewing people? What a joke. Yeah. But if you stick it out to episode 300, he really comes good. Like
well, it's like JRE. He's got over 2,000 episods. 2,000,
so many,
2,000.
Yeah.
And they reach like average, I think is like 2.5, 3 hours. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's fucking insane.
Joe Rogan, the man.
He's the man. I'm going to clip this. You're just saying Joe Rogan's the man.
No, he's all right. Post-COVID, he's cooler. All that sort of shit.
Calm down.
All right.
Calm down. Let's not get flagged. All right. So we're talking about, today we're talking about jiu-jitsu, finally. Finally, we're talking about jiu-jitsu again. And we're talking about the reality of jiu-jitsu. So go back and listen to, no, you don't have to. But basically we did an episode where it was more aimed at, hey, this is the reality of the sport. It's hard to get belt progression. Not everyone is going to get a black belt. Not everyone can make it. Very controversial episode. It got a lot of attention. People didn't like what we had to say, and others were like, oh, I agree with you. So
can you recall, was that the specific episode? No, it was maybe a different one. Do you remember the episode we did that was essentially saying you'll like never really get good if you only train twice a week?
No,
sort of thing.
That was in our first 50. Oh yeah, right. That was in our first 50 episodes, and I clipped it. And I remember because I was wearing a hat because my hair was so bad. So it was during lockdown. And I clipped that and put it on my YouTube. And I still get views on that video today. And I still get people still jumping in the comments and being like, you guys are fucking idiots. You don't know what you're talking about. I still get so much hate for that. But yes, that was a very different episode.
It's so, yeah.
Anyway, so why are we talking about the reality of jiu-jitsu again? Or why are we talking about the reality of jiu-jitsu? Where is this coming from?
Well, let me tell you a story. So just came into my it was, you know, I was reminded by it, I guess, from like my recent holiday. So my day-to-day jiu-jitsu, you know, compared to what I did in Brazil, obviously like I'm older now and whatever, and I don't live that life of a competitor anymore. And, you know, I have like a family and stuff and other priorities, but jiu-jitsu, I'm still in the gym every day. But, you know, where my gym is located and everything, I like to think the technical ability of the gym is really high, and everyone who visits the gym says that. I'm not saying I'm some guru, right? I'm just saying for Sydney and the area, and I think I come from quite a good level of jiu-jitsu, you know, in an application way, as well as a theoretical, the theoretical side of it. But it's not a competition gym. It's not a competitor's gym. The demographic of the area, you know, I'm sure if Lucas Lepre opened a gym in the same suburb, of course, people would flock to train with someone like that. If John Danaher opened a gym in the same suburb, it would become a competitor gym because people would flock to train with that person. They would travel along. Anyway, so I don't personally get a lot of hard rolls on a daily basis, and I don't get a lot of like other black belts. I mean, I have brown belt students and black belts who come through, right? But it's not what it's like, what I think training is like in Brazil. I actually had this conversation with, you know, who we haven't given a shout out to in a long time, who was in the gym today? Nogi Rob.
Nogi Rob. I forgot
Nogi
that guy
Rob.
even existed.
Yes. So,
Rob who?
yeah, he gave me some backhanded compliments because he now trains at GE, right? Because he lives closer there, but he works near our gym, so he still drops in. And GE's a competitor gym, right? And anyway, so he just spends a lot of the time getting bashed, and he's like, "Oh, so it's nice to come back here because I just get bashed there." And I'm like, "Well, what are you saying, bro?" You know, it's like what everyone here's easy.
Bashed, I'll come roll him.
Yeah. Well, I gave him a good bashing. He's gotten big, bro. He's lifting. His shoulders are really big, like super noticeable. Yeah. Like, yeah. And his jiu-jitsu's come a long way. Like, you know, they've got a lot of members at GE and a lot of different instructors. So I like to teach in a diverse way to allow people to develop their own jiu-jitsu. And I think you see that in the students. Like, there's the only person in the gym who would have the same game as me would be Eric, because we have the same body type. Everyone else like has a completely individual game. But yeah, GE have a lot of different instructors and a lot of members. So I think that exposure has done wonders for Rob. And, but yeah, I was talking about like hard training with him. And I said, man, it was only like you, Kieren, and like a few other people who get on board with what it's really like to train. And do you recall, like in rest rounds, Rob would do burpees, right, to keep his heart rate up. You know, like Rob's in the Navy, and he really like, you know, and wants to, you know, go into special forces and whatever. So he likes to push himself quite hard. And whereas you would know, there's a lot of people who, you know, I can't even announce it's comp training because then the gym will be empty. And I often say like, oh man, these guys are soft, or they turn up, it's comp training, then they don't appear for a week, right? Yep. And then
people actively avoid comp training. Like I've noticed, if you post in the group, "Hey, comp training tonight, everyone come," like, you know, you would expect people to flock to it, be like, "Oh yeah, good training, hard training." It's the opposite. Like no one, even the regulars that always show up on that time on that day, just fucking not there.
Yeah, but you know, but that's okay. I mean, look, we still train hard and roll hard. Like I've actually had some students from GE visit and gas out at our gym where it was just like a regular training, and they're like, "Man, we don't do this many rounds at GE," but you know, whatever. I mean, maybe it's just different days, different teachers. It doesn't matter. All this being said, yeah, I don't often get to roll, you know, what I believe is like, or get to train how I think jiu-jitsu should be trained and is trained at a competitive level, even if you're not a competitor, right? Like you don't have to be a professional surfer to catch a big wave at Pipeline. Plenty of people like, you know, and I want to be training jiu-jitsu like the guy who's getting barreled at Pipeline. Doesn't mean like, you know, you can surf, you can operate in the realm of a professional surfer without having to be one. or without necessarily being good enough to be one, but you can still be out there. And so I like, the way that I think the sport is that sort of type of training, right? And I was recently on holidays in Miami, and the guy I was staying with, not that much older than me, but he's a black belt, and very good, was really good in his day as a competitor. Like, he won worlds at brown belt, right? So really high level, and lucky for me, I'm much bigger than him, so he's a bit easier to deal with. But he's really good, and so we were training, me, him, and this other black belt, a Brazilian guy, like, who's a teammate of his from back home. And I was just reminded I don't even know if intensity is the word, but just the purposefulness in the training. Like, it was 100% training with 0% animosity, yet at the same time, it was somehow 100% a fight. Like it's just, and I forgot that that's kind of what it is, or I was reminded that that's what it is. And that's what it always was for me training in Brazil, that, when you high five knuckles, and in Portuguese, you'd say the equivalent of saying, like, good training, like, kind of like, yeah, let's have a good roll before you start. And then you go like it's a fight. Like, yeah, you're training. So you're not like ripping a submission like you would in a comp, but when you shoot your takedown, you shoot it at 100% as fast and explosively as you can, the same way, a boxer throws a punch with the intention and hope for it to land and knock you out or rock you or whatever. And it was just like so much more fatiguing. It wasn't even necessarily the fight in this, like, that it was a scramble or anything, but it was just every single, like just breaking a grip or maintaining a grip, like every single piece was a fight, and it wasn't a scrappy fight or anything. It was just, there was intent in every single move. And yeah, I was just reminded that, like, man, like, yeah, it's a combat sport, and like I don't want to say there's no flow rolls, because there's time and space for flow rolls for warming up and stuff. But if you're pushing all that stuff aside, if you're like, no, like, let's train, we're training to fight right now, it's like if you're training to, like, there's multiple different ways you can go to the gym, right? Like, just a regular gym. Multiple different ways to go to the gym.
Yeah, you can go by bike, you can drive a car, you can walk. I'm on board.
So there's multiple ways you can go to the gym and whatever, but in terms of the intensity and what's required, etc., to, let's say, build muscle and grow muscle because you're doing bodybuilding, like, it's a very specific way you need to do it, right? Like when you go, I see you going arm in arm, but what I'm trying to say is, like,
this analogy's falling apart, man.
If I want to get a bigger chest, shoulders, and back for my upcoming bodybuilding competition, and I go to the gym and do a light 5K jog on the treadmill, will that help? Of course not, right? Like,
are you cutting?
But you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
yeah, I know what you're saying.
Okay, I'm training to achieve a goal, which is to put on muscle, right? Yeah. Like, which requires certain things, and so, like, when you're like, okay, I'm going to train the combat sport of jiu-jitsu, which is, two athletes fighting against each other inside the rule set. Like, let's fucking go. And it's one of the best things about the sport, because you can, yes, injuries happen in bloody tennis, right? Yes, injuries happen, but you can go like 100% injury free, so to speak. Whereas you can't in striking, right? Like, pads on and all, you do a full, let's say, I don't know what the rounds are for like Muay Thai, but let's even just call it boxing, which, let's say you do 10 3-minute rounds in boxing with headgear and 20-ounce gloves, I don't care, whatever, and you go 100%, both of you, man, like the next day, you ain't turning up to do that again. Or at least you shouldn't be. It's not going to be very healthy for your brain. You know, but jiu-jitsu, you can do that, right? You can essentially go to war. For the average person, not every day, but let's say if you're already conditioned, you know, and that's how athletes train, man. They don't do it twice a week and only, you know, like, and it's a long way. I was just reminded of that. And I don't want to upset people thinking that, you know, because it's the people who train twice a day every day don't train like this every single session they're on the mats, right? That's an important distinction, okay? Because you can't do that, like your body can't handle that. I mean, I've heard there's some few all natural magical supplements and stuff you can take that help you train more than your body should be able to train. But anyway, but you know, when it's time to train, you know, it's like you don't. Yeah, man. Like you don't train sprints by jogging. You know, yeah, you'll do complementary workouts like going for, but like when it's time to train your sprint, you do sprints.
A good analogy. Yeah, right? now I'm on board with these analogies.
Perhaps that one was better than the weightlifting. That was way better. You know?
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that I was just going to say. So just to finish that, I think there's a lot of people who like think that they're getting better at sprinting and faster at sprinting by just doing months of only jogging. Yeah. You know, like, I mean, and of course, yeah, like, you know, the same way if you want to get better at deadlifts, you don't only do deadlifts. There's complementary exercises like, you know, that make your deadlifts better. So of course, there's other things you do that make your sprinting better. There's low intensity jiu-jitsu like drilling and whatever that will make your jiu-jitsu better. But if you want to get, when it's time to like put in the rounds of sprinting, you got to sprint. You know, and I just don't get a lot of that, and it was nice. It was refreshing, you know, like difficult, of course, but also refreshing. And I was just like, fuck, man, it was like every day, not every class, but every day, you know, in Brazil was like that. Every single comp class, 12 o'clock noon was like our comp training. And, you know, and I either then trained in the mornings or the evenings that weren't competition class, and it was more technique focused, and you still did some rounds, but it was a bit more relaxed and whatever. But like when it was comp training, like that was the time where you didn't concede a fucking advantage, bro. Nothing. Like it's time to fight. And, you know, I wish I had more of that. I mean, at the time, I don't always wish because it's really hard, but that's how we got to talking about the reality of jiu-jitsu. It was like 15 minutes of me waffling on about.
No, it's a good reminder, and I think that I'm not saying that my training is easier in Sweden. It's a different training environment, and the class, like I go less. I go to jiu-jitsu less now, and I was even complaining again to Martin. Shout out to Martin, the guy I was talking about that failed his Kimura attempt. Failure. Martin.
Next week you're gonna walk into the gym and Martin's gonna have a tire iron and he's just gonna be like dunk.
No, he did fucking heel hook me though, the bastard.
I got heel hooked last night as well, actually by Damo. I was like,
wow, nice.
Yeah, thought I was taking his back, and then I put my leg somewhere, and as soon as I did it, I was like, as soon as I put it there. It's not like I gave it to him. He also dug it nicely and everything. But as soon as I put my leg there, I was like, shit. Like I fucked up there.
It was funny. Never like recovered. With Martin, I was attacking from outside Ashi, and I didn't have normally I only go to outside Ashi when I have a guaranteed bite, and I thought I had it.
Was he standing? Were you like in X or you were both on the?
No, I think I was in guard in like some sort of butterfly, and I shot outside Ashi and then put him to the mat. And then when he was down on the mat, he reaped me to saddle. So he reaped my leg to saddle, and then he got a better bite and fucking ended up getting a lateral knee bar. So it wasn't really a heel hook, it was a lateral knee bar. But still, I was so mad about it. I was like, you motherfucker. Because it was like dead even till then. So the last like 20 seconds, I was passing him, and I did the thing that I absolutely hate. I threw I was like standing, passing, and I sat back on the footlock, and then reaped and got the heel hook, and then popped his ankle.
No! Fuck.
I didn't rip it, but I put it on quick because I knew I had 10 seconds, and it popped a little bit. I hope he's okay. I think he's all right.
Well, if he's not there on Thursday, you probably know why.
And he goes to me before the roll. He goes, "Oh, watch my ankles, because my ankles are a bit fucked."
Oh my god, you're sounding like a terrible training partner right now. Oh my god.
It was the other one though. It was. I knew.
Cool.
I knew it was his other ankle. So both his ankles are fucked now.
Oh no! God damn.
Oh. So excited! I pulled my headphones out.
But yeah, speaking of the like those proper roles, I had and then since I've been back, I've had a couple more of those quite coincidentally, and one was this. This was just on Monday, so it was my first day back after holidays, so 2.5 weeks off. I only trained once in Miami, just the one day with my friend, and we only did like 3 5-minute rounds. That was it. I wanted to do more, but he was kind of a bit gassed. Like, he doesn't train as much anymore, right? But like I said, still, he could not train for 2 years, and he's still, I mean, he was a brown belt world champion, he's very, very good.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I trained on Monday night, and it was more or less my first role in 2.5 weeks. And this motherfucker comes in the gym. I'm 6'4", and when I'm not being a fat shit, I'm usually closer to 96 kilos. So if I was,
you're about 225 pounds,
whatever that is. Yeah, like when I fight 94 kilos, right? And I used to fight 88 when I was younger, but yeah. Anyway, so let's just call it. I'm probably 100 kilos at the moment. 6'4",
225 pounds.
And this guy comes in 6'5" and 110 kilos. He told me, and a like a 3-stripe brown belt or something. And I posted a photo of me and him on the Vantage Jiu-Jitsu Instagram. For people, like, if you don't know me personally, like you haven't met me face to face, just looks like two dudes, right? But when you know how big I am, and I mean 6'4" is not that big, I don't think, but I mean for the average person, I'm taller than most people.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when you know me personally, and then you see this photo, and you're like, well, Adam's pretty big. That motherfucker's bigger than him. Like, how big is he?
We needed a normal size person in the photo for comparison. You needed me in the photo as like a size reference.
Yeah.
Then we can have like
Photoshop that shit. Put yourself in there.
I make myself even bigger.
Yeah. And it was really nice that he came in because actually, no, I'll tell that story after. But yeah, anyway, so he was my first roll. And I was just like, oh my God. And then I started rolling with him, and he pulled guard. And he's like Eric, bro. So we bitch about Eric a lot. Quick recap, Eric is an ex-professional basketball player, has a very professional athlete mentality. And he's
incredibly athletic.
Super athletic, same sort of physique as me. He's like 6'4", but way leaner. So he would weigh a little bit less than me and have have more muscle, right? Yeah. Super strong, super flexible. And the way he moves, and inverts and his flexibility, it doesn't add up for someone his size, and that he's only a blue belt. If it was Gordon Ryan moving like that, Gordon Ryan could be fucking 7'8", and you'd be like, okay, you do whatever you want, bro. You're Gordon Ryan, But it doesn't add up that he moves the way he does for his size. This guy was like Eric, man. His guard and everything was super similar. A lot of spider guard, really, really flexible guard retention. But so imagine rolling with Eric, but it's a brown belt and heavier. That's what this name's Thomas. That's what this was like. And I got
smashed.
No, well, he almost swept me a couple of times. Actually, he did almost sweep me a couple of times with that. What do they call it? Like the lumberjack sweep or whatever, where you bicep curl the one the one ankle and push your hip into the side of the knee, and that can lead into K guard and whatever. So he knocked me over a couple of times, but didn't sweep me. And man, like it took me, I don't know, I think we did a 6-minute round, something like that. It took me like 4 or 5 minutes to pass him.
Damn.
And then from side control, we got the armbar, and then my forearms were gone, bro. Like he was so strong and so heavy to stack him. And, but it was funny because he was like, man, he's like, I haven't been stack passed in years. And it's funny that he said that because we share a common sort of denominator in our jiu-jitsu, which is that there's this guy called Matthias. Matthias is from Argentina, and he was one of my training partners through all my time in Brazil. Matthias was always 1 or 2 belts ahead of me, so I think maybe I was towards the end of my purple when Matthias got his black belt, something like that. And, he would help out teaching classes at Alliance São Paulo as a purple belt. He was always he would help out. And then as brown belt, he started teaching some classes. I mean, Alliance São Paulo has a huge amount of super high caliber black belts. So not often did a non-black belt teach. But, sometimes if all the black belts are away at Worlds or something, and Matthias didn't go this year for whatever reason, maybe he would teach. Anyway, so Matthias was one of my training partners, and I wouldn't say he was my coach, but I did a bunch of Matthias's classes because he taught classes at the gym. Anyway, this guy, Thomas, is one of Matthias's students from Argentina. So, which is how he ended up. He's just in Australia visiting, right? A semi sort of working holiday or whatever. So that's how he ended up coming into the gym because Matthias was like, oh, if you're going to Sydney, go visit Adam.
See Adam. That's awesome.
Blah, blah, blah. Which is, I do the same. I've had a few students go to Matthias's gym when they're in Buenos Aires. And yeah, but it's just funny that he said that he hasn't been stack passing ages because Matthias he wouldn't be as big as you, Kieren, but he wouldn't be too dissimilar to your size, right? Your weight and height and everything. And Matthias is so tight in his passing. He mainly plays butterfly guard, X guard stuff, and he passes stack passing and over under and whatever. And he's just so tight, really tight. And in all my years of training with him, I maybe, it went from, I don't know what it'd be like to roll with him nowadays. Years have gone by, but, I think I maybe in all my years training with Matthias, maybe got the better of him once, when he was a purple belt or I don't even know. But I just recall I could never move him. And Thomas was saying how that he can't do anything against Matthias. He's he said that their gym is a bit sort of, clone-ish of Matthias in the sense that most of the gym plays sort of butterfly, X guard, over under, stack pass, whatever. So I guess because of that, he's very good at defending it because everyone tries to do it to him.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing he made it sound like Matthias can still do it to him because he's really, really good. But yeah, so he was like, oh, it's the first time I've been stack passed in years and whatever. And I brush it off, but it was one of those ones where you're like, oh yeah, brush it off. And then he walked out and you're like, oh my God, I never want to train with you.
Go to the bathroom and start crying. I nearly died.
Yeah. But unfortunately, he's also like Eric in the sense that he's a really nice guy. So you can't even hate him. He's he's super nice. And hopefully he comes in again. I think he'll drop in a little bit and whatever while he's traveling and stuff.
I want to train with him. Hopefully he's around next year.
Yeah, he said, it was a bit vague on that, which I guess is for a lot of people, depending on what sort of visa they get and whatnot. And so a little bit vague on his circumstances, but if he's around when you get back, I only did one roll with him, but like I said, like a brown belt heavier version of Eric. And, but Eric loved it. Eric, again, having that professional athlete mentality. So he's someone who is on board with the reality of what training jiu-jitsu is like.
Yeah, Eric likes to roll, man. He likes to roll hard.
Yeah, you know, even though he's not pursuing it as a career or to go compete, like he's 200% on board with like, okay, I might never do a competition, but this is what training jiu-jitsu is. Can't play a game of rugby league and half-ass try to tackle someone. Like that's not going to cut it. You know, he's on board with what training the sport is like when the clock beeps. And yeah, he did like, he was frothing on it. He did 2 rounds with Thomas. And then like, you know, afterwards he's messaging me, when did Thomas say he'll come in again next? You know, blah, blah, blah. Like he's just,
hard for Eric because so many people are just physically not capable of dealing with him. Ignore all technical ability. Eric's very technical. We've already mentioned that. But if your physical capabilities are so vastly ahead of everyone else's, then it's unfortunate for Eric because he's unable to express other areas of his technique. And his technique may suffer a little bit unless you can physically handle him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like he doesn't ever get the opportunity to come up against people who can pick him up or crush him or whatever. So opposed to being someone who would, you know, bask in the success of that, if you will, he's like, no, like he's not delusional to that. He knows that there's people who can handle him and he wants that.
The man just wants to be handled.
Yeah. and then the very next day, so that was Monday, and then on Tuesday I was fortunate enough, again, this coming from, like I said, I don't often get the opportunity to train with the appropriate sort of like fight, if you will. And then all the physicality, I guess I can kind of get. Like even, Chad, a recent blue belt, is very difficult to deal with physically, you know. So like the physicality part is not the issue. But anyway, so I had this black belt come in, much smaller than me though, like fight 77. So he's like probably on the day we're talking, he's probably like at least 20 kilos lighter than me. But recommended, he came in because he's a friend of, we've had Fabricio on the podcast before. This is maybe episode 40 or something we had him on.
Yeah,
going back a while. But he owns the Alliance in the Northern Beaches, which is in northern Sydney. And so he's not a student of his, but a friend of his. Like, you know, this guy, Antonio, trains at Fabricio's gym, but he just came over to visit and, you know, and just do a session with us. And yeah, the roll started, and like, again, just instantly just that there's a fight between every single grip without it being like, I'm spazzing out, you know, because you watch 2 white belts at a comp, they fight for everything, but it's not the same thing. It's not what I'm talking about.
Some points they don't even know what they're fighting for. They're just fighting.
Yeah. And then like, you know, big size difference, but I swept him, which, you know, anyway, so I swept him and then was instantly like, God, like this. I'd prefer to pass a big person's guard than a little person's guard. I really like so small and tight and flexible. Like it took me 5 minutes to pass Thomas's guard and his legs are longer than mine and I could barely fit in the space. This little thing. So I had to like go quite, you know, like put some smash to really try pass his guard, which I managed to. But then even then, I never got comfortable in side control just because the fight in him never stopped. You know, like I established in terms of if it were a comp, I would have got points, but like I never got into a good side control and whatever. And then the round ended and that was it. So it was like 3 people in a row in the span of a week for me that was just that. Again, not a reality check because I know what it's like to train, you know, properly, if you will. But it was a real sort of refreshing reminder. And I think, and it was funny, as one of the coaches at the gym, he was leaving. He had hurt his shoulder the previous day, and he was leaving. And then Az doesn't often get like as a brown belt, any of the other brown and black belts in the gym are all way bigger than Aaron. you know, like at least by 10 kilos, you know, some of them more. So he doesn't get anyone sort of around his weight and belt. And then he saw this guy, essentially his weight, putting on his black belt, and Az was like already walking out the door, and he's like, oh, and he stopped for a sec, and he kind of like rubbed his shoulder, and he's like, oh, no, fuck, I won't. And then I was speaking to him afterwards, and he's like, man, he's like, oh, I was spewing. He's like, I'm so keen to train with someone my size. And you get Az fired up, and he's got that fight in him. You just have to bloody get him going.
Just poke him with a stick.
Daryl. Simpsons episode. Come on, Kieren.
Okay.
Before you were born, bro. Don't worry about it.
Probably. Anyway. Yeah, that's one thing I'm looking forward to is, coming back to Sydney, and not that I'm not enjoying my time in Sweden, I'm just thinking out loud, coming back to Sydney, going back with my previous training partners and seeing if there is a difference for the better or worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, that's kind of what Nogi Rob said, right? Like, that's kind of what he was trying to say. Like, because he was like, oh man, because I've been with you for over 2 years until recently when, you know, he moved away and whatever. And he's like, so it's nice to come back to what is to some degree a reference point, you know, because I've come up with all the people in this gym, but now I've been away, and it's good to see how I do with them coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have key people that I'm very interested, not only to see their progression, but to use it as a measuring stick, I think.
So who would they be?
Well, I want to go back and smash Chad. That's for starters.
Oh, right. That's a given. His name's Chad. I mean,
yeah, bro. He's such a Chad. But yeah, and I want to roll with Ollie. I love rolling with Ollie.
Well,
obviously,
yeah, I mean,
Eric.
you might be out of luck rolling with. I mean, in terms
surgeries coming up.
Well, yeah, and he's stopped before that. So, like, you're at the moment, it looks like you're coming back in March, right?
Yeah, around there.
Yeah. So Ollie's his surgery is mid-September, I think. His surgery is. So Ollie is a brown belt who's having I can't remember the medical name, but he's having like a titanium, sort of like he's having a titanium cap put on his hip.
It's like a resurfacing.
It's all worn out. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's like a resurfacing. Anyway, but he's stopped
he's not old.
prior to that.
He's young. He's just had bad hips.
He's like 30. He's had bad hips forever. Yeah.
Poor bastard.
Yeah, he's already had a hip surgery, I believe. So this is not a new thing.
So in that case, if Ollie's off the table...
No, because, man, he stopped before that. He was training maybe like 2 weeks ago, not at the gym. He was training at a friend's house, and something completely insignificant. He just went to he was in half guard and just went to push and drive off his toes or something like that. And his pinky toe just completely broke 90 degrees out to the side.
Oh, what?
Yeah, bro.
Oh, gnarly. Did you see it?
Yeah. No, I wasn't there. Az was there, though.
Did you see a photo?
No.
Oh,
no one sent me a photo, actually. And then so he had to stop because of that. And then on top of that, he was like going back home to England for 6 weeks. So he's just he hasn't trained from about 2 weeks ago. And so he won't train, and he have his surgery in September. So then September, October, November, December. It's like, I don't know, man.
Ages for recovery.
He'll be lucky if he's back to... There's no way he'll be back to rolling hard if you get back in March. He's maybe just getting back to flow rolling back when you get back. So take Ollie off the table. Who else?
A better opportunity
Chad?
to smash him.
Yeah. Chad, Ollie's off the table. Toby's moved to New York. So
really?
Toby were your war partners.
The
culinary arts.
Culinary
he is.
arts?
Yes, he sure
That's
is.
Awesome. Good on you, Toby.
What about who else you got? Jonas. Jonas is a good role. What about Eric? What about Eric?
Obviously, I want to roll with you. I'm not going to tell you that.
No, too late. The people want to know.
I haven't started yet, but I've got a game plan. When I'm here, it's a very simple game plan, Kieren. Just outgas me for 2 minutes, and then I fall apart. God damn it, you ruined it. You ruined it.
I'm well aware of the weakest part of my game.
Because the role we had before I left, I wanted to come at you as hard as I could, right? I want to leave an impression. And I did, but I gassed a little bit and I eased off. And you broke me a little bit with, we've already spoken about it in the past, but I eased off the gas about two minutes in, right? And it was a 5-minute round. So I figured if I get the most, if I start to actually work on my gas tank, I have a fucking good gas tank, man. I have a really good gas tank.
Yeah, you do.
Especially compared to the average person. But if I start to employ key strategies that I've been developing to improve my gas tank to an elite level, and then I come in and I can maintain the same level that I hit you with for that first minute or two for 5, maybe I can gas you out.
Dude, I mean, it's actually, even when I was it's not the reason I didn't do better than I have done in jiu-jitsu, but I don't know, maybe it's a factor. But even as a blue belt, my gas and my ability to push through fatigue, which is quite coincidental to say that because I'm currently watching the slight segue, but most people know of that Netflix docuseries Drive to Survive about Formula One. There's a docuseries now. I don't know if it's new or old, but I just started watching it called Tour de France Unchained. And it's essentially Drive to Survive for the Tour de France. And I was watching that and just sort of being there's no way I could push through the amount of mental struggle and fatigue that these guys do on hill climbs and crazy shit like that. But anyway, so that sort of conditioning has always been my weakest part. And a while back, I don't know, I think you had already moved, but Ethan Thomas came into the gym, who's trains out of Sydney West, I believe, which is a gym in Western Sydney, and quite a high level, super competitive, really high level black belt. And I have nothing to fault on his technique, but even he was saying how his strategy and game plan, because we were talking about he lost a super fight recently when he had come in. And he was saying that he was really upset because he thought the fight was X amount of minutes, but it wasn't. It was less. And part of his whole strategy throughout his career has always been that he's not the most technical guy, but he can outwork anyone on the mat or whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did 2 rounds with him, but let's take the first round for example. It was 3 minutes in and I was fuck, bro. I could, he's way smaller than me as well. So of course he's going to be faster, way smaller. And he's very technical, but I couldn't keep up. It was just relentless. And, it's when you see it in MMA, these best MMA fighters in the world, and they just have this ability to just drag their opponent into this, man. And then I looked like the big heavyweight when you see 2 heavyweights in round 5 of a title fight being oh. Whereas he was he was like Demetrius Johnson, just being pow, 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 pow. I was fuck, bro. Yeah, so it's a very, I would probably say it's the best chance strategy, Kieren. I think it would, yeah.
Yep.
And
I mean,
I would. I
would get fit as fuck and then come at you like a spider monkey.
Yeah. Yeah, that could bode very well for you, for sure.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Unless it's gi, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
Because I can just tie you up and slow you down. But no gi, for sure, that strategy is paying off big time. I mean, even gi, it can pay off to an extent, but you can slow it down a lot easier in gi.
Yeah, and I can be thrashing and trying real hard, but if you just fucking cook the beans,
if you've just settled into worm guard or something, it's very hard to let your athleticism defeat worm guard, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, be interested. I guess we should wrap it up here. I've got a conditioning session that I've all of a sudden got to get to. No.
We both know that you're
no
no
conditioning. No.
Mate.
But
right,
you know what? Well, no, I was just going to tangent onto something else. So when I flew back, it's a very long flight. And, so the day after I landed, I was like, oh, I got to do something. I just got to move. I'll just go for a run. Like in my house, I don't have a gym or anything. I don't have any exercise equipment. And yes, I know so much you can do with like a floor and a chair to do dips and whatever. But I was like, I was just like, whatever. It was a beautiful day. I live near like a river. So I was like, I'll just go for a run round like on the river and the block and whatever. And I've always hated running, except when I was a kid competing in athletics carnivals, right? But like, as a teenager onwards, I've always hated running. And anyway, I went for a run. I don't know what the distance would be. I was not fast. It might have been as low as fucking 2 kilometers for all I know, right? But I did 2 laps of this sort of circuit, which took, 17 minutes or something. And I was just like, that fucking sucked so hard. I hated it so much. Like I felt so heavy and lethargic, and it just felt like way more effort than running should be, which I guess part of it is, how we get fit for such specific things. Obviously some things have carryover and whatever, but who was I talking to? Yeah, Mark, one of the older black belts I have. He was actually, again, coincidentally, a very similar story. He was talking about like friends of his who running is their jam, and when he goes for a run with them, he can't. Like he's just gassed instantly. And then if they jump on the mats to have a little wrestle with him, he's like, well, I can do like multiple 10-minute rounds and I'm fine, but I can't even jog for 10 minutes. Anyway, I went for a run and it sucked. Running sucks. I hate it so much.
Do you know why that is?
Because I'm fat? I don't know.
No. With Mark, do you know why he can't keep up with his running buddies, but they can't keep up with him on the mats in terms of cardio? Because I do, which is why I'm asking.
Go on, Kieren. Go on. No, I don't. From a scientific answer,
yeah.
No, I don't. Like,
so there's been research done on this,
but I know as well, like on running specifically, or just different sports specifically.
No, jiu-jitsu.
Well, this I know you've spoken a lot about. Like, so just go over it again, but about like how jiu-jitsu doesn't increase your VO2 max and stuff like that.
Exactly. So what they've shown in the early research, again, more research needs to be done. This is not conclusive, but what the evidence is suggesting thus far is that jiu-jitsu has a ceiling effect on how much it can increase your VO2 max. Meaning that, yes, if you're coming off the couch, jiu-jitsu will make you more cardio fit than you previously were. Because you weren't doing anything, bro. Like, fuck. But there's a very low ceiling effect that jiu-jitsu will have on your maximal aerobic capacity or your VO2 max. Now, the reason, though, that in this case, Mark can do multiple 10-minute rounds easily with his cardio fit, like running cardio fit buddies and be fine, is because of his movement efficiency. He doesn't use as much energy to complete the same movement that his mates that don't train would have to. So it is not that Mark's gas tank is bigger, because it's probably not. It's probably much, much, much smaller in comparative if we were to measure their VO2 max. However, he's tapping in to far less of his energy reserves in doing the same movements because of how efficient he is at those movements.
Yes, that makes sense. But like, yeah, I wonder where the line is, because, I used to, and even running, right? I guess it depends in what way you're running, whether it is improving your VO2 max, right?
Exactly.
But, I, at different points in my life, did jiu-jitsu for most of it, but like did jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai. And I remember when I trained Muay Thai, I could maybe do a 5-minute round. Not even. I remember I used to train with this other Muay Thai coach who was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and we would have sometimes, whether it was before or after, but in the Muay Thai gym, we would just have a bit of a roll, and like it was just the most gas-inducing exercise I'd ever done. Whereas I remember the last time I tried to do Muay Thai was while I was living in Brazil, and so I was essentially in my peak form, so to speak. Like I was at my youngest training the most point of my life for jiu-jitsu, and I couldn't even do a 3-minute round of Muay Thai. I was just like so gassed. So then, okay, let me make this segue then. If let's say we've got some people who are like, all right, guys, so I'm on board with, like, cool, you've gotten through to me that jiu-jitsu is like it's a fight. Yeah, like the analogy I gave. If the sport you're practicing is sprinting, there are times where the workout is running as fast as you humanly can. Doing a sprint, right? You can't only jog, right? So now, okay, someone that's gotten through to them, and they're like, I feel a limiting factor is my cardio, my VO2 max. Without like laying out a step-by-step workout, 6-week, this is your plan to follow, because I know you have courses on this. As a whole, what is a complementary workout / sport / exercise someone can do to increase their VO2 because they want to get more cardio fit for jiu-jitsu?
I'll give you two workouts to do.
Bonus.
One is to improve your aerobic base with what's called zone 2 training. Your aerobic base or zone 2 training is operating below your anaerobic threshold, meaning that your body is not accumulating lactate. So yeah, when you exercise, your body accumulates lactate, and lactate in itself is not a negative thing. It's when you cannot clear the lactate that it builds up, and you get fatigue, right? So by doing cardio in what's called zone 2 or a conversational pace for a long period of time, you raise your floor of your capacity, right? So you can go harder for longer. So that's the first thing that you need to do. You need to establish a better aerobic base. So the way you do that is low intensity cardio in your zone 2 for a long period of time, multiple times per week, but we'll start off just say one session, do 30 minutes, work your way up to 60 minutes. This can be in the form of any cardio modality that you like. Swimming.
What dictates
cycling.
zone 2? Is there something as clear as heart rate?
Yes, your heart rate below 70%. If you know your maximum heart rate, you can estimate your maximum heart rate, but it's better to have your actual maximum heart rate that you can do via a maximum heart rate test. Or if you don't have a heart rate monitor, you don't need to buy one. Operate in what's known as the conversational pace test, meaning that you should be able to hold a conversation on the phone with a friend, but it should be difficult to hold the conversation, meaning that you can't easily just have a chat. So you're not walking. They should be able to tell that you're doing cardio. They should be able to tell that you're jogging, for example. But you should be able to form full sentences, okay?
Yeah.
But if you're very unfit, maybe you don't want to talk, but you should be able to still actively have a full conversation with someone. And if you can't, you need to slow down for a bit until you're back into your zone 2. That is the first step, aerobic-based training. The second step is to do dedicated VO2 max work. So we've raised the floor of your cardio. Now the VO2 max raises the ceiling. VO2 max is your maximum of volume oxygen uptake. It's measured in terms of milliliters per kilogram of body mass is how we get to that. But it's basically the maximum amount of oxygen your body can utilize during exercise, during anaerobic work. So maximal effort. Now, in terms of improving your VO2 max, you will get some benefit if you do aerobic based training, but we need to do specific VO2 max work. The best protocol that I always recommend is something known as the 4x4x4 method. So it's doing 4 rounds of 4 minutes with 4 minutes rest in between each round. 4 minutes of what, you ask? 90% of your maximum effort, not to be confused with heart rate. So basically, you're going as hard as you can for 4 minutes, meaning not sprinting and then slowing down, but the maximum amount, the maximum speed, the maximum intensity that you can maintain at a push for 4 minutes, okay? And if you do that workout once per week,
And that can be the same thing. That 90% effort could be running, swimming.
It could be running.
Cycling.
You can do swimming. If
and what did you say?
Cycling,
you're going to do
rowing.
that. You're going to do that for 4 minutes, and then you're going to have 4 minutes rest, and you're going to do that 4 times.
Yes. Now, the 4 minutes rest is designed for full recovery. So if you're very, very unfit, if you've never done cardio before, maybe you just started jiu-jitsu, jumping straight into this protocol will be difficult. You may need to rest longer than 4 minutes. You may need to go up to 6 minutes, and you may need to reduce the amount of rounds. But the protocol for the average person, meaning average level of fitness, to get started is 4 by 4 by 4. I've found the absolute best success with this protocol for my clients and for myself, and it also closely mimics jiu-jitsu. Yes, I know that depending on your belt, you're not going to do 4-minute rounds, but 4 minutes of your maximum output for that 4 minutes and 4 minutes rest in between is a very similar rest to work ratio that you may find in jiu-jitsu, because we're not spending 5 minutes going absolute maximum intensity. There are natural breaks. Even if you have maximum intensity in mind, there are natural breaks and slow moments in a roll. So that is an exceptionally powerful, well-researched, well-backed protocol to improve your VO2 max. Now, if you want to improve your sprinting ability as well, then adding in sprints in the form of Tabata sets is also recommended. A Tabata set is a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio hit interval, so high intensity interval training. So do 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. Again, any cardio modality that you would like a rowing machine, not elliptical because it's kind of hard to sprint on elliptical, but a ski erg, cycle, like a stationary bike, outside running, hill sprints, sprint treadmill, pick your poison. You can even do things like kettlebell swings, but it's harder because I find that muscle endurance can be an issue for most people when we're really focusing on the cardio element. Because if your muscles are fatiguing before your gas tank, then we're not really achieving the right dose response for that modality, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, holy shit. There you go, people. If you are like, I need to get a little bit fitter so I can embrace the realistic fight that happens in a jiu-jitsu match or even training, there's a way to do it, right? Yeah. But, yeah, fuck. If you're going from 0, maybe don't try that on day 1. You'll probably be rocking the DOMs for a week long. But, like, you know what I used in Miami that I haven't used in years is one of those... just like one of those, I guess they're called like an ab roller, just the wheel on the 2 handles.
Yep.
Bro, like they wreck. Like I was sore for so many days afterwards. I was like, oh my God, they crush hard. But yeah, like don't leave yourself with absurd DOMs. Or do, I don't care.
Now I think it's a good moment to introduce our brand new segment that we said is a reoccurring segment.
Can you believe that we forgot it last week?
Yeah, it's so basic.
We remembered it between then and now. Yes. Yeah.
So what is it, Adam?
yeah. Imagine if we're both like, fuck, I was counting on the other dude to remember what it was. Yeah. No. So, yeah, I mean, obviously we won't explain it at length. Well, it's not. There's nothing to explain really, but won't explain it every time. But it's essentially just going to be a very vague, like today I learnt. And what I mean by that is it's not going to be, it's today I learnt, but it's jiu-jitsu related. It's potentially like nutrition related. It's potentially, like, I mean, I have my TIL for today, but then I saw a new one. I don't know if people saw this going around on Reddit I didn't see it on the TIL page of Reddit, by the way, but
you bastard. Subreddit today I learned.
Yeah,
that's so weird. I thought this reoccurring segment was we're going to talk about our favorite cakes.
Oh no, that's on our other podcast we do, the Beyond Cake
Beyond
podcast. Oh god,
Cat's out of the bag now.
But I saw this. I didn't read the article. I only read the heading. So like, take that with whatever
Okay,
But it was,
go on.
But it was vegan influencer dies from malnutrition, and I was like, yeah, it checks out. And like, I just left it at that. And then, I think I read a few comments that were like, oh, if probably wasn't so much due to being a vegan. She probably clearly had an eating disorder, blah, blah, blah. And whatever this, but, yeah. So anyway, like it might be like, today I learned that, Eric at the gym is actually a dickhead and we thought he was a nice guy this whole time. Turns out he's not, right? Today I learned, Chad's name isn't Chad, bro. It's Brian. That's even worse. I don't know.
No, Ryan.
Ryan. Yeah. So, anyway, since I'm already talking. So today I learned that even if you take Kieren's nutritional advice, he will still make fun of you. Where am I going with this? So last week I bought some groceries online, right? Which is a thing people do. And when you buy groceries online from a supermarket, if you haven't done this before, they typically substitute items that they don't have in stock. So one of the things they substituted, right, is I got a loaf of bread. It was like pumpkin seed bread. They didn't have any, so they sent me multigrain bread, right? Makes sense. But I had ordered creatine and they evidently didn't have any because what they sent me was a pre-workout as a substitute. And I was like, these are not the same thing. Like, like if I order chicken and you send me beef, right? Like they're not the same thing, like I get both of them are proteins. Both of them are in the supplement area, but they're not the same thing. So anyway, I just jokingly had a laugh and I sent it to Kieren being like, bro, look at this. I ordered it. Coles is the name of the supermarket for international listeners. And Kieren was like, and I just sent it to Kieren and sent a photo of the pre-workout to say, how funny is this? Like they're not the same thing at all. And he's laughing at me. He's like, I don't know what's funnier, that Coles sent you a pre-workout or that you bought creatine from Coles. And then I was like, hey, fuck you, motherfucker. You told me that as long as it's creatine monohydrate, they're like, it doesn't matter. Like it's the same shit. Right. And then he was like, had a laugh. It was like, haha, touche. This leads I
felt like a dick.
However, dick or not, this has led me to the next question that I then did want to lead into a more sort of information piece, which is like, at a certain level, like, does it matter? Like if you were pursuing professional bodybuilding or powerlifting or whatever, does it matter then? Or is it all just, like some brands are known for better quality, or is it all just marketing? And it's like, man, like creatine monohydrate, it's fucking creatine monohydrate. Like it doesn't matter, or to some extent, does it matter?
To some extent, there's levels within levels, but we're talking about the 1%ers, right? If if you're finding the cheapest creatine monohydrate that you can find because that's all you can afford, it's way better than taking nothing and you're not wasting your money. But in saying that, my preferred type of creatine is a specific creatine monohydrate produced in Germany, which is considered like one of the purest forms of creatine. They sell it to supplement companies, so they don't sell it directly from their manufacturer. They're from their factory where they manufacture it. They sell it to supplement companies that then chuck their label on it and then resell it. But it's called Crea Pure, and it will say on the label. Many, many, many different reputable supplement companies sell Crea Pure. That is, in my opinion, slightly better. Now, to answer your question directly, does it matter what supplement company you purchase your creatine monohydrate from? Not really, but some companies have been known for tainted supplements, meaning that their manufacturing process is very shit, and there is a bit of cross-contamination. Now, this can be an issue if you are in a tested federation. It's not as bad as what it was back in the day, but they're basically what was happening, particularly with pre-workouts, is they're trying to spike their pre-workouts to make them, particularly for the first couple runs of the formula, to make them better, meaning they're spiking them with low-dose amphetamines. And that would give the a huge effect for the pre-workout, and then the word would spread that this pre-workout is amazing. And then once people were hooked on it, then they'll change the formulation or, whatever. So I mean, I guess
it doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters to the extent of how much do you trust a brand, right? Like it's not
exactly.
It's not like if you buy, I don't know, a jar of pasta sauce that like you have the facilities to test that it actually has 40% of this particular strain of tomato in it, or like you can't test the shit, right?
So creatine's so fucking cheap. Monohydrate is what you want.
The brand is, I think, BSC. Sounds good.
Yeah, it's super reputable.
Yeah. So anyway, today I learned doesn't really matter. Buy a creatine wherever it's cheapest to some extent.
I just told you. You bastard. Okay. Well, one thing I will say is Coles creatine is probably more expensive.
Yeah, the main reason I got it, to be honest, was because I didn't have any, and I mean it's been one of those things that I've been like, fuck man, I ought to start taking creatine again. I just keep forgetting or whatever, and originally I was like, oh, just go to whatever Chemist Warehouse because they have lots of supplements or whatever, and then that turned into I'll get it online, and that turned into like I'll get it from a supplement place or whatever, and it turned into just never getting it. Yeah. And I was like, man, I'm ordering online anyway. And I was like, fuck, I'll just buy it. Because kind of like what you said, if it's that or nothing, it's better to just take that.
And BSC is reputable. Like, it's a good brand. They probably have a markup now that they're in Coles. Ironically, they're more expensive now, most likely.
Yeah,
so people don't know. If you're buying supplements from Coles, you probably don't know what the market value is, if that makes sense, per se.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it's too late. Paid for it now.
Well,
actually, no, I didn't. I didn't get it. I had to go all the way back and be like, return the pre-workout that I didn't want. And I'll be like, give me my creatine, motherfuckers. And they did. Yeah.
So my Today I Learned is more of an announcement / because it's not really Today I Learned. It's more like a, bit of
That's
whatever
right.
you want.
The Today I Learned segment is very open to things that you learned years ago.
It's like a show and tell. Like little school, like primary school, and you'd have to get up and do a show and tell. And this weekend I went to the movies, but this is a show and tell. So I've been researching, and we didn't plan this out clearly, but I've been researching cardio for jiu-jitsu a lot. May or may not have anything to do with the fact that I'm trying to improve my gas tank to beat up Adam, but. One thing.
Yeah, wait, so what do you say I have to do? 4 by 4 by 4.
You're not doing it, bro. Okay. You'll do it once and be like, I'm never doing that again. So I'm not worried.
Shit.
So one thing I've been learning more about and refreshing myself on in the latest research is something known as the interference effect. So the interference effect is a negative effect between two different performance modalities that you may be doing at the same time. In simple terms, it's the negative impact that cardio can have on strength training. Say you're doing 2 strength sessions per week, but you're also doing cardio like the aerobic base or the VO2 max cardio. And what was previously thought of for the interference effect, that it only applies to endurance training, meaning that if you do endurance training within the same day of your strength training, then your strength training will be negatively impacted by the endurance training, right?
Right.
So I thought it only, or what was previously established, was that it only applies to long, like endurance training. It doesn't apply to sprint training and VO2 max training, so shorter intervals. But that appears not necessarily to be the case in some new literature that's come out in sports science to investigate this exact thing. Now, there are some general rules of thumb, though, with adding in cardio to your strength training protocol. It's definitely okay to do it in the same training program. It's just how you do it is important. When you're doing the aerobic-based training that I described earlier, make sure that it doesn't fall within 24 hours of your strength training, and ideally not within 12 hours of your jiu-jitsu training as well. When it comes to sprint training, if you can apply on VO2 max work, if you can apply the same restrictions, as in doesn't fall within 24 hours or within 12 of jiu-jitsu, that's ideal. However, it's not doable for everyone. So if you're going to do sprint training and strength training in the same day, ideally they're 12 hours separated. But if they have to be in the same session, make sure your cardio is always after your strength and conditioning, and try to have it on a day where you're not doing legs the next day. For example, if all in the same day. So try and separate it from your lower body work, if that makes sense. So if you're doing full body workouts, doesn't really matter. But if you have an upper lower split, make sure it's like outside of 24 hours between that sprint training and your lower body split. So just some updated recommendations on the interference effect. Now,
can I add a TIL question? What is leg day? I hear people talk about it.
Never experienced it. It's something I read on Reddit. It's
Hey, sorry to interject with a segue, but really briefly, I mentioned I think it was last episode, like I was listening to Travis Stevens on the Lex Friedman podcast, and he does some of his judo takedowns. I forget which one it was that he was talking about specifically. Might have been like, I don't know if it was just like Epoxy and Nagi or whatever. Anyway, one of the throws that typically require like quite a deep squat and a lot of leg strength and whatever, and he does it differently with kind of like straighter legs with less of a squat, and essentially like splits his legs so his legs don't really need to bend, and if he needs to have his hips lower, his legs are just further, his feet are further apart, all off the fact of how much he hates training legs. And that just like filtered all through his career of developing. I mean, fuck man, silver medalist at the Olympics, you know.
Could have been gold if he did fucking squats.
Yeah. But now it's essentially a new way that people do these throws, and lots of people do it now, right?
Oh, wow.
Just because he found that way worked best for his body because of his, he
That's pretty cool.
He said that he would do legs, right? Like, because he was on an Olympic team. Like his coaches would say, "This is the workout, you're doing it," and he was like, "I'll do legs." He's like, "But I will bitch and moan my whole way through it. I fucking hate it," And yeah, anyway,
not many people do like it. It's tough, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go back.
I do have two more, not today I learned, but announcements, which is really one.
All right, however you want to sell it.
I was on two podcasts recently, and they both came out on the same day, which was not planned. The first is a shout out to 1-800-BJJ Help podcast, which is run by Josh and Jake. So Jake runs the popular YouTube channel Less Impressed, More Involved, BJJ. And I was giving him
one of the best YouTube channels. It really is. It's really good. Like one of the best jiu-jitsu YouTube channels. It's a great channel.
Definitely amazing. If you haven't seen it, I'm shocked. But just type in Less Impressed, More Involved, BJJ. It's exceptionally high quality. Jake does such an amazing job. But not many people know that he has a podcast, because I was giving him shit about this after the recording. He doesn't promote it. He works so hard on the YouTube videos. He's so laser focused on producing the best videos possible. And he's also working on a really, really awesome project that he showed me as well. I'll check out Less Impressed, More Involved BJJ to see that. A bit of a teaser, but check it out. Anyway, he does a shit job at promoting his podcast. Like, no one knows that it exists, really. So this is a shout out to 1-800-BJJ-HELP. It's geared toward beginners, and it goes over some awesome topics, different takes on things that we have, similar topics in some sense, but completely different in others, deep dives into technique. It's awesome. Josh and Jake do an amazing job. They had me on to talk about strength and conditioning for jiu-jitsu because Josh was one of my clients. Yes, we talk about his experience. The next podcast that I was on is called the Next Level Guy podcast. Awesome podcast hosted by a guy named Ian. He is a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's been running the podcast for a long, long time. He has all sorts of people on there. He's had Gary V, Kelly Starrett. He's had CrossFitters, like so many, like really big names. I'm impressed about the big names that are on this podcast. And now mine's amongst it, baby.
Oh, you're amongst them, bro. Look at you go.
So we actually recorded this like at the start of this year, if not last year. I think it was the very start of this year. So I think it's taken 6 months to release. So he must like absolutely like record constantly to get such a backlog. And he's got some really awesome names, really, really good podcast, excellent questions on there. We actually, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that it was going to go this way. But the first half of the conversation was talking about how to improve your jiu-jitsu. So if you want to hear all of Adam's advice on how to get better at jiu-jitsu spoken through my mouth, listen to the first 20 minutes. I shit you not, I was just regurgitating like everything that you've told me in like a condensed format, pretending like I know what I'm talking about. I'll send it to you. You should listen to it. It's actually funny.
Well, I'll be listening and I'll be like, hey, that's what I said. That was my idea. No,
I didn't even like refer to you at all.
I bet you didn't.
I didn't shout you out at all, bro.
I bet you didn't. Probably didn't even shout out our own podcast.
No, I didn't.
You suck.
No, he did at the start. Oh my god!
What about on the 1-800 help one? Did you shout out our podcast or no?
Yeah, of course, of course. And they did in the intros like as part of my resume, baby.
What is it? Is it Josh or Jake who's the less impressed?
Jake.
What belt is Jake?
Purple.
Man, he's like super knowledgeable and analytical about jiu-jitsu for any belt, right? Even if you said black belt, I'd be like, yeah, he's super. But I mean, yeah, wow. Dude's going places in the jiu-jitsu realm.
He really is.
Where is he from? Like, where does he live and train and stuff? Where is he?
I think he's in the States. I'm not sure whereabouts in the States that he is. They're both states.
Yeah, there's lots of them. There's lots of states.
Man. There's states. There's like 40 odd. Anyway.
50, I'm told, I think. Yeah. Sorry.
Something about stars on the flag. I don't know. Stars and stripes, baby. Anyway. So, yeah, they're both in the US. Yeah, really, really awesome questions. Like, they both had really, really excellent questions. So they did their research. They were prepared. And I do have one more thing, a little anecdote that I was going to bring up earlier in the episode, but fuck it, now I'm rattling off my list of shit that I forgot to talk about.
Yeah.
Earlier in the episode, we were talking about Ollie, the brown belt. He's actually back in the UK because he's from the UK. He's there right now, and he sent me a message.
And we've got him on the line.
We got him on the line, Ollie! That's a hip, bro. No, but he sent me a message, and this has never happened to me before. But he goes, I'm back in Brighton, and I was chatting with a mate of mine who's working on his mobility at the moment. And he said that he found this mobility program online, and then he shows it to me. And I scroll back 2 years and play a video of you and me rolling. So he'd found my YouTube channel, my mobility series on YouTube. He doesn't even train jiu-jitsu. And it turns out that, it was me. And then Ollie was like, oh, hey, look, here I am. And his mate was like, what the fuck?
No way. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's so crazy
so
that
funny.
people searching for mobility routines are finding my my 30-day mobility challenge and
as they should. I gave you a big enough shout out last episode, Kieren. You didn't even shout out our podcast when you were on a podcast.
I did, man. It was in the link in the bio. It was in the description. It was in the introduction. because particularly the next level guy, because I didn't really know him on a personal level, he got my bio from my website, which in there, it's like the first line, co-host of the Beyond Jiu Jitsu Podcast.
Look at you go.
The number 17th best jiu-jitsu podcast in the world.
That's right. Yeah, we're climbing the ranks.
We're definitely the top 5 on most metrics.
We tend to like, I don't know. It's not like, I guess anyone can make their own list. But yeah, if you type into Google best jiu-jitsu podcasts, I mean, we pretty much come up on every list, which I think is cool.
But it turns out that it's all like my websites.
Why are all these hosted on Kieren.com? What is this? Someone tell this man to put a shirt on. No, that's cool, man. Yeah, sick.
Well, that was a long today I learned. And hey, look,
that was a long today I learned. Today I learned that this segment sucks. No, it's good.
If we talk for another 5 minutes, we have also adhered to the poll that we said with the
longer episodes. Yeah, well, I mean, this is already longer than usual anyway. But
you're welcome, everybody.
We've got next week. We are doing the first of the new recurring episodes, right? Which will be where we look at sort of what we've learned over the last 10 weeks, 2 months of doing not specific training, but doing purposeful training with having a particular technique or set of techniques or whatever in mind. Like, for 3 months, I'm focusing on, finishing from the back or whatever it is. So, for those who didn't know, Kieren is going to be sharing his knowledge as to what he's learnt, over the last sort of 2 months of being kind of just focusing on playing guard, essentially. For me, it's been particularly like Troy bars and arm bars have been my focal point. And this is what I do in my training anyway. Like, I'll move on to something else shortly, right? But yeah, so it'll be, I don't want to say a technique breakdown, but it'll just kind of be sharing our information and of that particular technique and where we were at the start and where we are.
A more technical approach. So you may actually learn something for once.
Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't count on it. But depends. If you've already passed your free introductory class in jiu-jitsu, you probably won't learn much. But if you're still no. But yeah, no. So I'm looking forward to that. What do we do? So just twiddle our thumbs for 3 more minutes. Tick this baby.
To hit the target.
Tick this baby over to the hour and a half. No, I don't have anything else to say other than it's good to be back to recording and looking forward to the more consistent episodes. Had some people reach out wanting to be guests on the episode that I was talking to Kieren about as well. That even though we're not
rejecting.
Sorry, Dad. even though we're not a guest focused podcast, we do have like a few people who are definitely, more than noteworthy guests who are would be awesome people to have on. I think currently the main struggle with it is previously it just wasn't in our format, and Kieren and I did everything in person. So even when we had the guests on, like we had Levi and Alanis and Joey and Fabricio and all that, these were people who were physically recording with us. And then we went remote and we were like, yeah, great. So it's going to make it easier to have guests, but it's actually a bit more difficult because of the time zone difference.
With 3 different time zones now.
Yeah.
Australia, Europe, and the US.
Yeah. Like even looking at this, I'm looking at this going like, yeah, we've done a longer episode, but my wife and son, they haven't landed back from holidays yet. They get back. They'll be back by the time this episode comes out, but they get back tomorrow. And I'm looking at this and looking at the time and going like, it'd be like, have my son being like, just feed me by now and whatever. But anyway, logistics, we'll work it out. And then, sorry, the last thing I do want to say as well, just to go back. Honestly, if people are interested in docuseries, that Tour de France Unchained one on Netflix is fucking awesome. If people are into, I don't even follow cycling at all. I don't really know anything about the sport. I'm not particularly interested in the sport, but man, those dudes operate at such, it's just interesting to watch, being in the realm of athletes, doing this sport of jiu-jitsu, it's super, for me, interesting, entertaining to watch, to follow along with like the elitist of the elite of really any sport, right? And this docuseries is cool, so I recommend it if people want to watch it.
And did you know that the Tour de France is the most watched sporting event in the world? It has more viewers.
I had heard that there was the World Cup.
No.
Really? Yep. Oh, well, there you go. Fuck, Kieren, you wasted your next week's today, I learned. You wasted it.
World Cup.
Now you got to think of a new one.
No, the Football World Cup is number 2, I think.
Really?
Olympics, the Summer Olympics is number 3. Winter Olympics is number 4. And then I think 5 is cricket or something. I might have fucked this up. Let me look it up. Most viewed sporting events. I learned this off TikTok, so it's probably
it's gonna be like synchronized swimming championships.
Yeah. Yeah, so number 10 is the Super Bowl. Because all the Americans are like, Super Bowl? It's like, no, bro. Oh, shit, it is the FIFA World Cup. I wasn't even close.
I thought it was the World Cup.
I fucked this up.
But when you said it...
Number 1 is FIFA World Cup. Number 2 is Cricket World Cup. Not even top 2, bro. Number 3 is Tour de France. 4 is Summer Olympics. 5 is Winter Olympics. May as well do the whole cup. I don't even know what that is.
Top 5. No one's remembering after that.
What is UEFA Championships League's finals?
And that's pretty sure a football league.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, but you haven't.
Oh, is that that? I have heard. I actually did watch this.
Isn't that like the European?
Yeah, this is the European Champions League. It's the Champions League. Duh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, football's like the most watched sport in the world, but yeah, people really get behind the Tour de France.
Manchester City beat an Argentinian team, I think, for that one, something like that. I watched it. And
Go team!
And then FIFA Women's World Cup, number 8. That's surprising. Boxing, and then Super Bowl. I actually have been watching the Women's World Cup.
That absolute finals at IBJJF Worlds.
No, it's ADCC. Yeah.
Close.
Yeah, very close.
All right, guys. Well, we successfully... You guys didn't even notice we ticked over the 1:30.
Yeah, we successfully wasted 6 minutes of your life. Fuck you all.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. Next week, first episode of a recurring episode on... going over specific techniques that we've been working on. So I'm looking forward to that. You can find us on Instagram at Beyond Jiu Jitsu _podcast. You can find Kieren on his YouTube, Instagram, me on the gym's Instagram, whatever. You know where to catch us. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to catching you next time.